Well, good day, Michael here. Today I'm going to look at this little knife from Flissa that I recently got from Amazon, and it was only $33. So I'm going to have a quick look at that knife today, and I have to give a bit of a speech beforehand and say that I've just been away and come back, but before I went away, this is kind of like a spoiler alert. I went away, and just before I went away I thought, you know what, I'll just do a quick cut test of this knife, because I was only expecting like 40 or so cuts. It's 14C28N, and it's a cheap knife. It's from Flissa, and I thought, 40 cuts, and I'll come back and review it when I get back. So I started to just do a cut test on it, and it cut, 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 and I was astounded. I got to 100 cuts and I thought, no way, what's going on? What is this steel? What? How can this possibly be happening? And it actually got to 160 cuts. And I was flabbergasted, I was astounded. That's like better than D2. How could that possibly happen with Flissa 14C28N? Because all the other knives, say this one here, which is from Rake Knives, and it's in 14C28, and I think it got about 70 cuts or so, and it's known for its 14C28N, and everything kind of that I've had has been based on around that, and I haven't been that happy with 14C28N. Then I've got this knife, and 160 cuts was ridiculous. Every time that I tested on the paper, it just sliced through it. I could feel it getting blunt, cutting through the rope. It got harder and harder, but every time I sliced paper, it just went through crisply without any kind of hang up, all the way through to that number of counts, and it was unbelievable. So there's can be a number of reasons for that, and I've got various comments from a couple of people in particular, and one viewer, I don't know if he's a subscriber, but Rocks and Kids said that a lot depends on how it's actually sharpened, and you can get a difference of like 100 times just in the way that it's sharpened. So the reason why I've given this heads up before we even start testing this, I've sharpened it, and if I don't get anywhere near the cuts that I got on the factory edge, because that 160 cuts was on the factory edge, so it's sharp enough for the test, that was on the factory edge. If I only get 40 cuts or 50 cuts, that is a significant factor. I haven't had that before, where the factory edge has just absolutely smashed my edge that I put on it. But if that is the case, and it doesn't like my edge, and I don't get the same number of cuts, or even over 100 cuts, if I get like 40 cuts, that is a tremendously big issue for my testing of knives on rope. And rope's only one sort of medium. Some knives will operate better on the way that you sharpen it compared to cardboard or something like that. So rope, generally you want a fairly toothy edge to get through that rope, not put as much force on the rope, which will bend the steel. What people will say about 14C28N is that it's a tough steel, so therefore if you're putting force on it, it shouldn't affect it as much as some other steels that aren't quite as tough, as long as you've got the right edge on it. I've put a 800 grit edge on it, but to me it doesn't look as toothy as what it could be. So I'm going to test that today to see if the actual edges that I'm putting on these are not performing how they should perform. This knife, just a quick little review. I knew it was going to be a small knife, and I'll just get out the baby just so you can see a size comparison there. Hopefully you can see the two. So it is definitely a small knife, and there are people that are not going to like it. Christian, when he puts this into his hand, he is not going to like this knife. It will be too small. It is small in the hand, but when I was actually using it, it didn't feel that bad. You have a generous choil here, just like the baby's kind of got that choil there. It's the same sort of thing, so you can actually get a good grip if you're using the choil in the way that you were supposed to use it. If you use a pinch grip, it actually works well for that. If you're just trying to use a normal grip back here, it's probably not going to be effective. So what is the point of such a small knife? And I would say this: it's light, it's small, it's for EDC carry, it fits in the pocket, and away you go. So I like the EDC knives because pocket knives, you get all the stuff stuck in there. If you're cutting meat and whatever else, you get stuff stuck in it. You're constantly trying to clean it out. Fixed blade works for me. I don't have to worry about any of that. Having said that, this is where this case falls down. It's obviously plastic, and it's a fairly cheap plastic. What I do not like, because I do want to clip this inside my pocket, just like I clip that one inside my pocket. This clip, which rotates, which is good, it doesn't come off. I would like to put a Halti clip hopefully on that side, although they're not the normal rivets, but this thing doesn't actually come off, and when you clip it into your pocket, the blade's facing the wrong way. Oh, maybe not. Yeah, so you can only go that way. You do not want to draw that out, the blade going the wrong way. I tell you that, I've cut myself badly because I've pulled the knife out along my thumb and cut into my thumb. So you have to have it clipped like that, and it won't do it. And I can't take this off without mangling it and breaking it. And, you know, I'm not even sure how to get that off. So to me, Flissa, that's a big mistake. Secondly, I don't know if these rivets are going to be useful for a Halti clip. I will have to see, and I'll have to try and adapt something. So that's the major thing I did not like about the knife. Secondly, it is very small in your hand. It's meant for small tasks. You're not going to baton with this knife. But it did feel pretty good to cut initially, and I had no hot spots or anything, and it's just a neat little thing. But the major thing was how long it actually cut for. So without wasting any more time and making this video too long, I'm going to do a cut test. I was going to compare it to the rate to show you the difference, but I think that's just going to take too long to do. So I'm just going to see how my second sharpening of this steel, if I can get up the high number of cuts. I might have got lucky and got one that's 61, 62 HRC, and that's why I'm getting the massive amount of cuts. But we will see, and we'll see just how effective my sharpening is, and if I don't get the same number of cuts, I need to go back to school on that and try and work out what is best for this steel and what I've done wrong. I'm not the world's greatest sharpener, I admit that. Is it a big factor? We're about to find out, and we shall see how it goes. And hopefully it'll go well, and you'll see that this is a great steel, and I'm very surprised, very surprised at what it did last time. So let's go, 10 cuts, and then we'll test it, see how it performs. So I am holding it back and it's working fine. go, first 10. I'm actually a bit nervous about this because I don't want to stuff it up. So there we go, first 10, but I can't. Got to try and not talk too much in between. There was a little bit of wear on those cuts. Right, so that's 20. There's a lot of wind here which is going to affect my cutting. It's blowing the paper. Definitely not going to be as good as that factory edge. I don't know what they did with it. There's 30. No problems there on 30. Like I said, it's really difficult when the paper's moving all over the place. Right, 40. Fine on 40. Losing its shaving sharp edge. About 18 degrees, by the way. Righto, 50. Better write something down somewhere. Got a long way to go compared to the factory edge. I don't think I'm going to get there. Well, let's have a look. Okay, clean cut. It just, I think it loses its initial shaving sharpness, but the working edge just keeps going. Hopefully. 50. $60. No worries on 60. Right, that's 70. So even 70 is probably now where this one was at. It's not hanging up, but there is somewhere there. I can see maybe a glinting error on 80. got an issue. Seems like it might be failing now. Okay. Alright, so it would seem like the factory edge was much better. Yeah, see, it's hanging up. That one was alright. Okay, it's definitely hanging up. So what I've got to try and do is work out why the factory edge was so much better on this knife than me resharpening, because it was twice as good. And it kind of makes me doubt some things now. No way that's anywhere near it was on the factory edge. Yeah, it's really not good. So I'm gonna go resharpen it on a lower grit and then come back on the 80 cuts to see if that is my issue. It's just not toothy enough and it's stopping. I can't see what else it would be. So we'll come back. Thank you for now and see you soon. Well, hello, welcome back. So I went and excuse me, resharpened this knife and I put a 400 grit finish on the knife. And I pretty much got 80 cuts again and it was failing. So this is the 80 cuts. So I really am trying to figure out what's going on here, why it went so well on the factory edge and why I can't replicate that to the same degree. So you can see, yeah, it's just failing bad all over the place. Now when I resharpened it after the factory edge, I was pretty sure that I got the same 18-degree edge on it. I used a fixed system and a marker, and as far as I know it's the same as the factory edge, and yet the factory edge performs so much better, which is very different. I've never had that to the extent of this knife. And I'm trying to really figure out what the difference is. Why I got so much of a better result. Is it that I'm just not getting rid of that burr enough and the burr's folding over? I wouldn't have thought so. When I did the 400 grit finish, I used a very rough leather and then a very fine. I didn't overstrop it, I made sure of that, and it was sharp enough on that, and you could feel the toothy edge on it, but it's still showing that glittering finish. So there's a couple of options for me. I've got to go back to work, and so I'll do a follow-up video on this to try and work out what's going on with this and see if I can get it over 100 cuts. So I might try it on 20-degree edge. I might try it on a fine edge, although I very much doubt that's going to give me the same result. I'll definitely get rid of the burr on a finer edge, but it felt pretty good at the 400. I did get rid of the fatigued edge with a sharpener across the edge to make sure there was no fatigued steel, and yet I'm not getting the result that I was. Admittedly, when I was testing it before, it was quite windy, so the paper's kind of blowing all over the place as you cut. But there's no doubt here, where I've just moved out of the wind, that it's just not cutting. So there's no doubt it's failing the test at around 70 to 80 cuts. So I'm going to do some backup stuff with this and mess around a bit and see if I can figure out why I'm not getting the performance that I got on the factory edge. And that's all I can do at this point. And I really want to work it out because it did perform so much better. And I've always got better results when I've sharpened it than the factory edge. And yet this is the reverse factor here. And I was just amazed at the results. So I'm going to try and get to the bottom of this, and I'll do a follow-up review once I've tried to work out how I can get this steel to perform. Now, Joseph from Diamond Cut Steel was going to order this knife, so I'll be very interested, because he's the master sharpener. I'll be very interested to see how he goes on the factory edge with this knife, and then when he sharpens it, to see what kind of performance he gets out of this very same knife, even though one batch of these knives will be different to the next. So I'll be extremely interested to see what result he gets out of this knife. I think it has potential in it. It's already as good as the rate for 14C28, but I know it can perform better. I just have to try and work out what I'm doing wrong and how this steel best performs and gets that 160 cuts, which was just amazing. And it was slice and paper right up to that point. So why? What is the difference? It is definitely glittering on that edge. So I have to try and figure it out, and hopefully Joseph gets this very same knife. I can see what he does and how it performs, and maybe learn something from his channel, and maybe learn something from the different experimentation on this knife. So stay tuned, because I'm going to try and work it out. Now that I've got it performing on the factory edge, I'm going to try and work out what the heck is going on. So for now, Michael out. Have a great day or night wherever you are. Stay tuned for more. Bye bye. Alright, just a bit more to add. Even though I said goodbye, I couldn't wait, and so I went back and I sharpened this to 3000 grit, and I carefully made sure that I stropped it enough to make sure I removed any burr, and I've got 130 cuts out of that. And yeah, I mean, there is a little bit of glinting, but not as bad. And there's a little bit of tearing of that paper. It's not quite hanging up. It's probably enough to stop the test. See right there. Some cuts are better than others. Like that, which is probably how I got the 160, by cutting like that. And it was, you see, that's fine cuts, but there's a little bit of paper tear. So I could probably, if I was doing my cuts carefully enough, See that hung up there? Anyway, I could probably get a few more maybe. I reckon around 120 is probably the realistic mark. 160, maybe I was... That's a good cut there. So potentially I could probably get a bit more. What I think is happening, just to finish off, I think on the lower grits, I'm not quite deburring. Maybe it's got something to do with the steel or something, I'm not sure. But I haven't quite deburred it, and I'm sharpening the burr, and the burr is folding over and causing glinting. The factory edge, they must have done a good job of deburring it, and there was no burring, no folding over of that burr. And I think on the 3000 grit, even though it probably won't perform as well on rope, generally, I'm deburring it a lot better and getting that edge to hold a lot better than what it was before. There's a bit of a hang up there, see? That, I believe, is what's happening. But see, there's a good cut there. So that's how I got my 160. It's still cutting fine there. And I probably could go on from 100, that's 130, so maybe I could get it that way. So I definitely think it's a burring problem that I'm having, and I wonder if that has been a common case when resharpening, that I'm just sharpening the burr. Never thought that was the case, but maybe it is, and maybe when a lot of the factory edges, they're doing the same thing. They're not really removing the burr like they should be. So there's a bit of a homework for me to go on. I'll also change the edge angle to 20 degrees and just see if that gives me better performance as well. But I definitely think it's a burr issue, and I definitely think this steel is performing quite well. So it must be up there with the hardness. That's enough for today. I'm definitely finished, and we will get back with more experimentation on this knife to see if I can figure it out. Alright, definitely Michael out this time. Bye bye.